Israel, Iran, and the clash of civilizations. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. So we're entering more than a week of war, Israel versus Iran, and we're seeing here in America a split in the MAGA movement. Right? We see some very notable conservatives, some very notable self-declared, self-professed Donald Trump supporters, MAGA supporters coming out and saying that America has no business entering this war against Iran with Israel. I disagree, but everybody's entitled to their viewpoint. I disagree because out of all the wars that America has involved itself in the last 100 years, I see this Israel war as being the one that most matters. This is the war that matters. And I come at it, as listeners of Bold and Blunt know, from a Christian conservative perspective, meaning biblical perspective first, right? Those who bless my people, I will bless, says the Lord. Those who curse my people, I will curse. Very simplistic, God's words to Abraham, right? When he was creating the nation of Israel. And look, very simplistic, I know, but from that, I think a lot of Christians actually draw their support for Israel. It's sort of a line that cannot be crossed. It's the red line, as Barack Obama kept saying during his White House term. Remember when Syria's president Assad was rumored to be unleashing chemical warfare against his own citizen. It's the red line for America to get involved. And of course, Obama's red line kept moving. Moving, so much so that finally Putin was called upon to act as mediator of the conflict, came out looking like such a peacemaker. And now here we are again. Putin has been whispered, talked up, pushed as a potential mediator for this Israel-Iran conflict. Boy, Putin does love to be seen as the peacemaker of the world, right? I think it would be a mistake to have him as the mediator. He is definitely more pro-Iran than he is pro-Israel. But that being as it may, what's taking place, Israel-Iran, isn't just a little skirmish, a battle, yet another Middle East breakout of war. It is a clash of civilizations. It's a showdown of good and evil. And look, Israel's war is America's war, is the West's war, is all civil society's war. Before I get into more of this, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, which I know that you do, why not take the next step of listening and subscribe? You can do so at edify.app, at Real Life Network. That is the news-based arm of Pastor Jack Hibbs's Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills Church in California. You get your faith-based news at Real Life Network. And I'm happy to say that Bold and Blunt is among the offerings at RLN. So you definitely want to check out all the podcasts that Real Life Network produces, as well as Bold and Blunt there. You can get Bold and Blunt at WashingtonTimes.com, where I would invite you. Notice I said invite. It's so polite, right? Instead of just saying, sign up for my podcast, sign up for my newsletter. I'm inviting you. I'm very politely asking you to sign up for my Bold and Blunt newsletter. Just go to WashingtonTimes.com and scroll to the bottom of the page. There's a section called newsletter section. Click on it, and you'll be taken to the page where you can see all of Washington Times' newsletters, which are all great. But since this is my podcast and I am requesting you to sign up for my podcast and my newsletter, I just want to draw your attention to the one that says Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley. Go there, enter your email address, and you will get delivered to your email box Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3 times a week. all the commentaries that I write at the Washington Times, as well as my twice weekly Bold and Blunt podcasts. But guess what? You can get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available. The Wall Street Journal, let's just read a little bit about the latest from the Middle East, right? The latest in this Israel-Iran war, conflict, engagement, whatever you want to call it, which, keep in mind, this is the Wall Street Journal's latest Thursday morning, but by the time you actually click on play and listen to this, things could change because, as with all wars, they're fast moving. But so far, this morning, the latest, the Wall Street Journal, in the Middle East, Israel and Iran continue to exchange fire as the conflict entered a seventh day. An Israeli hospital was hit by an Iranian missile, while Israel said it struck 100 targets in Iran, including the heavy water reactor in Iraq, A-R-A-K, and a site in Natanz that it said was being used for nuclear weapons development. President Trump told senior aides late Tuesday that he approved of attack plans for Iran, but was holding off to see if Tehran would abandon its nuclear program. People familiar with the deliberations said, just read a little bit more here, asked if he had decided whether to strike at Iran's nuclear facilities. Trump said, "I may do it, I may not do it," end quote. And he repeated his insistence on Iran's unconditional surrender, saying, here's the quote, "The next week is going to be very big, maybe less than a week," end quote. I think President Trump is being not just diplomatic, but strategic in his refusal to be nailed down by the media with a yes or no on decisions to be made about America's involvement with this war, right? You don't want to tip your hand. You don't want to say, yes, I'll do this, but no, I won't do that. You want to leave Iran in the realm of guessing. What's Trump going to do? What's Israel going to do? What's going to happen next? You want to keep those question marks out there. So Khomeini, the Ayatollah, won't sit and decide, well, since I know America's not going to do this, so then I can wait out while Israel does that. So you want to keep the enemy guessing. And I think President Trump is doing a marvelous job of releasing to the American people, releasing to the world, in fact, what he can. He's being bold and determined, strong and principled and determined, so unlike the last Joe Biden administration, which, by the way, can we just say a quick prayer of thanks that we no longer have a Democrat in the White House. We no longer have a Joe Biden. Thank goodness we don't have Kamala Harris and Waltz, right? Can we just say a quick prayer of thanks that the right president is in office at this time in history? And so we have in President Trump someone who's strong and determined and principled in not just standing up for America first, right, and make America great again principles, because, it's the chant is death to Israel, death to America, right? So it behooves America to make sure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. And that is definitely a make America great again, America first principle. But we also have a president who is just so open and not saying one thing and doing another, right? Not wishy-washy type of policy agenda, diplomacy, yet drawing hard lines in the sand, that kind of thing that the Joe Biden administration did with Israel, right? We have a president who is just, we are with Israel, and that's it, and that's that. And on the next day, when asked the same question, same answer. We are with Israel, and that's that, and that's what it is. And then the third day, well, how do you feel about Israel? Are we going to support Israel? Here comes the answer. We are with Israel, and that's that, and that's how it goes. So it's really nice. I'm sure not just for Israel, of course for Israel, but it's really nice for America to have somebody in the White House who, you know, where they're coming from. You know that this president has America, has Israel, and in this war has Israel's back, because, as I said, Israel's war is America's war, is Western society's war, is civilized society's war, right? And so you really have this clash that's taking place. Israel, which, remember, was attacked by Iran's proxies on October 7th, right, 2023, and from there came more attacks from more of Iran's proxies, right? The Houthis in Yemen, and Hezbollah, right, in Lebanon, not to mention the ongoing attacks from Hamas in Gaza. And oh yes, let's remember that Hamas still has dozens of kidnapped Israelis, right? Dozens of hostages being held in Gaza still. So, you know, how about Iran ordering Hamas to release all the hostages as a show of goodwill if they want to actually come to the table in some sort of agreement at this time? But look, Iran doesn't want to come to the table because Iran doesn't want any outcome of its ability to wage war against Israel, except an outcome of eradicating Israel from the face of the map and all the Jewish people from the face of the world. And then once that is accomplished, to come after America. And it's not like we're scared of Iran or anything. It's not like we should be scared of Iran. We have way more military power, not to mention our God in America is the God, and we don't have to fear. When we have God on our side, we don't have to fear the false gods and false worshipers out there. But the fact is, we aren't a warring nation, or we shouldn't be a warring nation anyhow. We just want to stand on the right side of things. And that's going a little bit down a rabbit hole, but to come back to my main point here, it was to say that this indeed is a clash of civilizations. It is the war that matters. If you go back in American history, you can make a case of military-industrial complex pushing America into some wars, and America doesn't really have a decided interest in going into this war, and America is too frequently getting involved in these long, drawn-out overseas wars, and then the occupation of territories that go on, seemingly for no American interest. You can make a case for a lot of America's engagements and military operations over the last decades. You can say that. But this is not that. This is a good versus evil, and this is a religious war, one that sees radical Muslims desiring to rid the world of Jewish people and destroy the Jewish nation, and then take those destructive energies and aim them at America. This is a true moment in history where we in America actually have all the political ducks in a row to take action in coordination with Israel, who is always facing these battles and these wars and these attacks from the radical Muslims, and join forces and do something with long-term positives, not just for Israel, not just for America, but for all civilized societies of the world. And I want to get to my guest today, because if anybody knows the suffering of the Israeli people, both during wartime in and in the after effects of war. It's my guest today. She is the president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. She has been a guest before on Bold and Blunt, and I've been a guest on her show as well. Happy to say, Yael Eckstein, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I know you are in Israel right now in the middle of wartime situation, so I really appreciate you taking the time to be on Bold and Blunt. Yael Eckstein, thank you. Thank you for being here.
It is such a blessing to be with you. Thank you so much.
So I understand that you made it back to Israel. You're in Israel right now.
Yes, I was supposed to be in America, in Arizona, actually, for 3 days to meet with different fellowship partners and people who help the Israel-America Jewish-Christian relations blossom and bloom. So I flew in for what was supposed to be 3 days, and I was on my way back to Israel 3.5 hours into the flight when we were turned around because Israel's airspace was closed. Israel was under attack from ballistic missiles by Iran, and I was stuck in America for what ended up being just a few days, but we didn't know how long it would be.
Well, congratulations on making it back safely. And now that you're there, where are you located? Well, first off, let me mention that you head up the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. And so we're going to get into what your work with that organization is. But where are you located right now?
So right now I'm located in central/northern Israel, near Haifa.
Okay. And what are you experiencing?
So I landed yesterday, and the first thing that was very clear was that this is a war like Israel, maybe since 1967, hasn't been in. October 7th, of course, was a tragic day, the worst terror that's taken hold of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. What we're experiencing now is a different kind of terror. Then the terrorists broke in, and they kidnapped people and murdered over 1,200 innocent individuals. Right now, all of Israel is under ballistic missile attack, 3,000-pound missiles, huge missiles that are traveling into space and then landing in homes and different civilian locations across Israel. So when I landed in Tel Aviv and Ben Gurion Airport yesterday, the first thing I realized was that the airport was eerily silent. There were hardly any airplanes. There were hardly any people. And it's not safe for people to fly in yet because of all the missiles that are being launched at Israel. And so that was my first experience. Then I came home, and within half an hour, I was in the bomb shelter with my family, with our home shaking, literally, from the impact of the booms, some of them which had direct impacts very close to me. And then since then, I've been on the ground running and helping to save lives, doing work of the fellowship, where we're bringing food to people who have been affected, placing bomb shelters in the most at-risk locations, and doing whatever we can to bring some people comfort and hope and life-saving aid specifically now.
I think it's just amazing and so courageous what your organization does, because you're on the front lines and you're armed with food, right? It's not like you're engaging in battle.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how many volunteers do you have? How many people do you have working for the fellowship?
So we work with a lot of partners. So we have a pretty small staff. We have 65 staff members who distribute aid annually to over 2 million individuals. And so we rely on our partnership with the municipal social workers, with each city across Israel, with the national government, the Ministry of Welfare. They look to us to be the humanitarian first responders while they're getting the bureaucracy organized, where they're on the ground providing the aid. And so, for example, for people whose homes have been hit, we've been there. In one instant, they lost everything, and they end up both, some of them mourning families. There were many children who've been killed in these attacks. There was an entire family, actually, of Israeli Christians who was killed, and so many of them are in personal shock and mourning. But there are thousands of families right now who lost their belongings in their homes. And so they need a toothbrush, and they need shoes. They need a change of clothing for the next day. They need pajamas for the children. And so the Israeli government is there to evacuate them, bring them to a hotel that will take care of them. But until they get what they need to meet their immediate needs, it takes time. And so the fellowship is there when the rocket hits, right after, to be with the families, to accompany them, to bring them their hot meals, to bring them their clothing, to bring them whatever they need for those first few days until the government can come in and care for them.
So before I forget, how did you even get to fly back to Israel? Because I thought the airspace and the airport were all closed down and still are as we speak.
It was a week of miracles, and they opened it for a few flights, and I got to be on one of the first flights back, so I could be here on the ground helping.
So when you travel now, and your volunteers in your network travel to these sites to help the Jewish citizens, what kind of attitudes are they displaying? How are they panicked? Are they? I know we have discussed before the resilience of the Jewish people. How are they faring?
Wow, well, it really matters who we go to see. On one hand, the people of Israel are so resilient, are coming together to help the people who are affected. The fellowship is organized with experience of 40 years in emergency first response, and being the emergency first responders in the area of humanitarian care. And so we're really organizing and mobilizing also the community in order to help. The hardest thing for me is seeing the elderly. We went to go visit an elderly, 90 years old, whose house was affected by the rocket. Not enough that she's an evacuee, but all of her windows were cracked, and she's sitting there alone. And we showed up, and we brought her a meal, and we brought her volunteers to sit with her and talk to her, and she was just crying from joy and thanksgiving, just that she's not alone, that someone didn't forget her. So I think it's especially hard on the elderly, on the children, and we need to be able to take that resilience of the Jewish people, the resilience of Israel, and be able to mobilize it into something of providing effective aid, which is the fellowship's expertise. Right now, under rocket attack, we're placing bomb shelters. We have shelters that are made in factories that go on huge trucks, and we're working with the Homefront Command, that the fellowship, over 100 shelters that we are building, placing under rocket attack during times of war, so that as soon as those sirens go off, the sooner the better, that the civilians, the children, the elderly could have a place to be safe.
Is there a safe place in Israel right now? Because when Hamas started firing and then Hezbollah chimed in, I know that the Jewish people were moved from those borders toward a more central location in Israel, in hotels and with family members. But where now, with Iran just throwing these missiles with no real precision? They actually target housing. Where is the safe spot?
Unfortunately, right now, there's no safe spot. The safest spot is to be in a shelter. And that's why the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, my organization, is doing everything to place as many as we can. Iran is targeting civilians. It's targeting homes. It's targeting communities and small towns, from small towns near where I live, where there was a rocket that fell just last night, to huge, some of our biggest metropolitan cities like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and Haifa. They're targeting oil refineries, but they're also targeting the apartment buildings of elderly. So unfortunately, and it's something that is, causing a whole lot of fear and a lot of panic and a lot of prayers and resilience as well, there's nowhere here in Israel that's safe. And so we have to hold this balance of staying close to our shelters. No kids have school right now. There's no work right now, only for essential workers. The entire country is essentially paralyzed and closed, but it's something that, we had to do to ensure our survival. This is like the War of 1948. This is very similar to the War of 1967. This is a war for our survival, to make sure Iran doesn't get nuclear weapons that they've said Israel will be the first place that they use it on.
And I happen to believe that it's America's war too, and that Israel is doing the dirty work for entire world of civil society. So when you hear things like in America, there's a certain segment that has emerged from the conservative side that say we don't have any business as Americans getting involved with what they say is Israel's war. What is your reaction, and is that message getting out to the Israel people? Are they listening to that with any sense of dismay?
Well, I think every country has to think about themselves first. So this whole concept of America first, I think, is very noble. But I think the way that you understand it has to be aligned with the reality around the world. Nuclear Iran is a threat to America, both a direct threat because those missiles could reach America. And we all know that Iran says first they're going for the little Satan, which is Israel, and then the big Satan, which is America. They're directly threatening America. In their parliament, they cheer death to Israel, death to America. And it's also a threat to, of course, American troops in the Middle East, but it's also a threat to the entire free world because we know Iran has, they have goals of wiping out the free world, of destroying the West, of having an Islamist world that is oppressive to anyone who's not like them. So I think this is a direct threat to America, and it is in America's interest, in whatever way, of course, the president decides, to make sure they protect those interests.
Just two questions because I know that our time's tight and you have to run. So looking down the road a bit, when the missile attacks stop, how long is it going to take Israel to recover from this, both economically, getting businesses back, and you mentioned kids aren't going to school right now?
Well, Israel is so resilient. I think the second we have it's safe to go out, you will see a country that knows how to spring back into action in an instant. You'll see the beaches full, the coffee shops full, the restaurants full, and the workplaces full, and the schools full. That Israel knows how to bounce back. Israel knows how to be resilient. We just also know how to follow the instructions of what keeps us safe. So Israel's economy, though, will take a lot longer. We've been in war for almost 2 years. We have had 7 different fronts trying to destroy Israel, all of them funded by Iran. So on one hand, this is one of the hardest wars in my lifetime that Israel ever fought, and the hardest we've ever felt it on the home front. But on the other hand, this is, God willing, going to usher in days of peace and prosperity that the Western world hasn't known since Iran became Islamist. Iran is the world sponsor of terror. All the terror, most of the terror in the Middle East that we are facing, both America and Israel, most of the threats on American soil that are from Islamic extremists are funded by Iran. That if we get rid of the threat of a nuclear Iran, if the Iranian people could be free, if we no longer have these proxies across the Middle East being funded by Iran, this is a blessing that the whole world, the free world, the world that stands on Judeo-Christian values, that sanctifies life, we will all feel the huge effect of that in the most positive way. And I believe that we've learned from history. Is there darkness? Yes. But does light always persevere? For sure. Is there evil? Yes. But does goodness always ultimately win? Yes. And this is the ultimate fight of good versus evil, light versus darkness, truth versus lies, sanctity of life versus a death cult that cherishes death. So I believe we have to stand together, all of us who know the difference of right from wrong, all of us who want freedom for our children, who want a world of prosperity and hope and Judeo-Christian values that sanctify life and give people the ability to live life in freedom. This is the most maybe historic time in our life that we're seeing that clash of civilizations, and that if we win, we'll see a new future for us, our children, even our grandchildren.
So well said. So well said. Yes, this is the war. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, how can people help Israel victims right now? How can they donate to your organization? Just talk a bit about that, Yael.
Thank you so much. Well, we are doing big things on the ground right now, like placing bomb shelters that cost, $15,000, $20,000, and we're providing food aid to over 2,000 direct victims right now of rocket attacks, people whose homes have been destroyed. But I want to make sure that everyone understands every single penny makes a difference, because when you're dealing with food boxes and the need for clean water in bomb shelters and the basics that you're delivering to elderly and Meals on Wheels, $25 is the difference between an elderly getting that meal or not, between a child having what they need under wartime in Israel or not. So I believe in the promise of Genesis 12:3 that all who blesses Israel will be blessed. And now is the time, if you've ever thought about blessing Israel, if you're praying for Israel, now is the time also, I think, to pray not just with your mouth, but with your hands, and be able to bless and give life to the people of Israel through the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. And you can do that at www.ifcj.org. So that's ifcj.org for the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews.
Such great work you guys do. You are such a warrior. I mean, really, it's amazing what you do.
Everyone's doing their part.
Well, of course, but it's an honor to speak with you from Israel, you on the ground in Israel right now. And thank you so much for taking time to meet with me. Thank you.
Oh, God bless you. Thank you so much, Cheryl.
God bless. The website, once again, ifcj.org, International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. I want to thank you for listening. Remind you, if you like Bold and Blunt, that you can get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available, at Real Life Network, Edified.app, and of course at WashingtonTimes.com, where you may also subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter just by entering your email address. Thank you again for listening. Tune in next time. In the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.